Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt your regularly scheduled programming to bring you this special bulletin. The inability to let a bad game just, well, go the way of the dodo, so to speak, astounds me. This constant coping mechanism of blaming everyone but yourself, your writers, your developer, your studio, when your product fails. I don't understand it. The complete and total lack of accountability in the entertainment industry is, well, prevalent, and nothing could be more prevalent in this case than Dragon Age the Veilguard because, well, we got a few articles here, and hey, why not just lump them all into one? Because heaven forbid we just keep talking on and on and on about an abysmal failure of a game with terrible writing, terrible game mechanics. Well, I wouldn't say terrible, boring game mechanics, uninteresting characters, and one particularly insufferable character. But hey, it's not anyone's fault. It's everyone else's fault. It's not the writer's fault. It's not the voice. Well, it's definitely not the voice actor's fault. Don't go after them. They're just paying for they're doing a job. Never go after the voice actors, ladies and gentlemen, unless of course they come out and say something stupid. Then yeah, you'd make that decision. But whatever. In the first little instance over here from PC Gamer, former Dragon Age writer says Clear Obscure Expedition 33 and Baldur's Gate 3 prove, quote, what's possible when a game is given time to cook. Time to cook. My understanding is Dragon Age the Veilguard had 9 years since concept to release. I'm sorry if you decided to pivot away from, well, live service to single-player game in the middle of all the nonsense, but that, I do believe, has nothing to do, at least very little to do, with why the game failed. Your marketing department went out and just screamed to the rafters how inclusive the game is, and look at all the modern-day nonsense you can put into your character that's in a high fantasy game. Things that didn't make sense, things that came across as purely 100% ideological insertions into a game where it just didn't feel like it belonged. And when the critics came out and said, hey, this is dumb, this doesn't make sense, you have magic to take care of those things, talking about top surgery scars, because we want to be inclusive, everyone. That doesn't make sense in a high magic, high fantasy game. Please forgive me, it just does not. The only reason you put that in there, along with this, I don't know, fanatical, almost kink, obsession with vitiligo, to each their own, but where's this coming from? Some sort of fetish. Truly exceptional games just don't just appeal to their audience. Well, Dragon Age the Veilguard didn't even appeal to the longtime fans of Dragon Age. David Gator, I bet. They expand it. Sales of Baldur's Gate 3 were amazing and kind of, I'm going to jump around to a bunch of different lovely little quotes, kind of make a lie out of it. I remember when I was at EA. Oh, anyway, that's not, here we go. Right here. I think there's such a thing as expanding the audience. Well, when you attempt to expand the audience with things that your core audience are not interested in, well, you lose your core audience and the audience you're attempting to expand to. Again, myself, along with many, many other content creators, have talked about the elusive, I was about to say illustrious. No, they are not. The so-called modern audience does not exist. And no matter how hard you try to create them with what you put out in your piece of entertainment, they will not come. No matter how much you build, they're not showing up. They're not showing up to the movie theater, to the TV shows, to your streaming services, and they're not spending their money on your video games. If anything, they're going to go hang out with Captain Jack Sparrow because, well, unfortunately, for whatever reason, they do not have that expendable income at the end of the month to dump on the escapism that is video games. Cater to your core audience. Cater to the audience that has stuck around since day one, that has shoved money at you over and over and over again. When you pivot too much, and Baldur's Gate, I'm thinking of better games. When Dragon Age the Veilguard pivoted so hard in the opposite direction, you turned people away. I think there's such a thing as expanding the audience as opposed to treating the audience as this finite number of people, right? Expanding the audience is, try not to expand too far because you'll alienate the ones you already have. That's what Expedition 33 did. No, Expedition 33 took a chance. They didn't have an audience to expand. What are you talking about? They said, hey, let's give this a shot. A small group of developers put that game together, former Ubisoft developers, which kind of lets you know what happened with Ubisoft. Put the game out, said, hey, try this out, got a contract with Microsoft, Xbox Game Pass, and crossed their fingers, and it blew up because they cared. Maybe not worrying about the audience, but maybe worrying about how much love and passion they had for their game and putting their money where their mouth is. I think it manages to take the elements of JRPGs, it's whatever. And I don't think it's doing a lot of new things, honestly. Maybe a good story, good gameplay, good mechanics. How about that? Maybe the developers of Expedition 33 did this little thing that I like to call make it fun first. Fuckers. It takes a number of more recent trends and kind of bundling them up in an interesting way that I think makes it very accessible to people who normally wouldn't play JRPGs. I do believe that is true. It has a turn-based system with actual dodge and parry mechanics that a lot of people aren't used to, but still enjoyed. But again, the story, the gameplay loop, it respected your time. It was interesting. It was enjoyable. And word of mouth carried Expedition 33 all the way to heights, well, Ubisoft definitely didn't see. As you said, the successes of Clair Obscur and Baldur's Gate 3 also demonstrates, quote, what's possible when a game is given time to cook. Again, Dragon Age: The Veilguard had 9 years. How much more do you need to cook? Anyway, what's next? Let's playing the blame game. Dragon Age, this one is from Games Radar Plus. Dragon Age Maestro says EA always spoke about the hypothetical nerd cave full of die-hard RPG fans that would always show up, so you didn't have to try to appeal to them. Whether or not this is true, I don't know, but let's think about that for a moment. They're just going to show up. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter how many changes you make to the game, to mechanics, what you take out, what you put in there. They're just going to show up. I wonder if this is an outlook across the industry that if you build it, they will come. Well, again, Dragon Age: The Veilguard proved that to be false. Maybe they were white. Maybe they were white. Oh, dear. Freudian slip, ladies and gentlemen. Maybe they were right, but they shouldn't have said it. Well, they were obviously wrong. I'm glad that they said it because, well, it's a bunch of more nonsense coming out and blaming everyone else. If you don't care about the game and just make it a RPG, the diehard fans will show up, so we don't have to put any effort into anything, into the story, into the characters. And, well, it definitely showed that they didn't put any care into the characters, into the story, and so on. Because, well, again, I played the game, and I will never go back to it. Boring, insufferable characters. Now, we have our next case from IGN of Dragon Age: The Veilguard star, quote, absolutely devastated over backlash, says people wanted to see Bioware fail. It's an idiotic stance to take. Well, that's an idiotic statement to make because as gamers, we don't want any studio to fail. We don't want games to fail. We want bad games to fail. We want ideologically driven studios to shut their doors so they stop making bad games. Let's see if we can find the quote here. Speaking during a new interview, discussing her many iconic video game characters to date, as well as her role in Microsoft's upcoming Perfect Dark reboot, Wilton Regan said she had loved her time at BioWare's Inquisitor, though did not believe the character would now return. I feel absolutely devastated for BioWare as a studio. Let's feel sorry for the big mega corporation. Come on. Feel sorry for them. Pity them because they decided to go checkbox ideological route instead of, I don't know, making it fun first. Let's see. I personally thought it was a really strong game. Well, opinions vary because not everybody felt the same way you did, at least, outside of the shills. I thought it was just BioWare being more BioWare. BioWare creating a trash game? I remember a day, and I've talked about this numerous times, the three Bs, BioWare, Blizzard, and Bethesda. When they put out a game, when they announced a game, or just even little talkabouts and whispers, you were confident at one time that it was going to be actual AAA masterpiece of a video game. We do not exist in that era anymore. These studios have gone so far downhill that if you see BioWare, I mean, Bethesda's nickname is Bugthesda. BioWare has gone so far off the rails since the early days of Mass Effect and Dragon Age 1 that it's unrecognizable. And Blizzard has a laundry list of problems to date. So BioWare being more BioWare hasn't been BioWare for at least a decade, I'm sure. The quote continues, I think a lot of people kind of wanted to see it fail. Well, after the marketing, after the banning for talking about the character creator, the questioning the character, anytime you did any sort of criticism on the vitiligo, on the top surgery scars, or the lack of a posterior in the female characters, you were banned, you were ostracized, you were called all manner of different names. So yes, after a while, you bring this sort of thing on yourself. After a while, yes, we want to see you go down in flames because you have decided to put your ideology above making a good game. So, but that's our fault, right? Wanted to see BioWare fail either because they're just really bad people on the internet. Okay, we're just really bad people. It is all our fault. Your inability to take accountability or to pay attention to the criticism that are being given of this game. At launch, the Veilguard was review bombed online. Good. More of it should come. I should do a video. I've had opinions on review bombing, thinking that, the idea that we always talk about the negative review bombs. No one talks about the positive review bombing because that is a thing. People who have never seen the product, didn't play the game, but they're giving it 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10, simply because they want to combat the chuds, or they're just massive shills, or they're bots. I don't like to talk about that. Giving negative reviews seems to be the only way gamers can voice their displeasure with a studio, a video game, a developer, or whatnot. So many different avenues have been taken away, whether getting banned from forums, getting muted in a Discord, dumped off of Reddit, so on and so forth, that, well, this is the closest way to voice their displeasure, and it's happening again and again and again. You want to classify it all as just negative review bombing because people just bad people on the internet. Well, when you generalize your critics and don't pay attention to what they actually say, because of course you're going to get trolls. But when you have such a blanket statement, you just make it worse. Don't feed the trolls, pay attention to the actual critics, and improve. What's so difficult about that? Criticism of the game being woke-centered on its inclusion of a non-binary companion character, which is the least of its problems, and No. The problem people had was the terminology and the insufferable nature of Tosh as a character. Implementing modern day words, human words, 2025 words into a Dragon Age game did not make sense and put people off. Sorry. Try again. The ability for the player to choose to be transgender. Fucking pronouns. Again, least of the game's problems. Something that if you present players with a good game, they genuinely will not care. And that's been proven over and over again. Cyberpunk 2077. What was it? Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. There was a lot of salt going around on that one. Lots of discussion, lots of videos, lots of controversy. And it was still a hit of a game because, regardless of what you may think of Daniel Vavra, they decided to make the game fun. first, and then add a few extra things in there, here and there. So, I'm sorry. This is gaslighting. This is deflection. This is nonsense. On Steam, Dragon Age: The Veilguard now sits with a mixed player response, with users defined tags for the game describing it under LGBTQ+. Now that tag should never be in a fantasy RPG because it's not important. Unless, of course, there's trolls putting it under there just to be trolls, which, hey, don't feed the trolls. What else? One final thing, because anti-fans, because it's not just a lovely voice actress doing it. It's also, well, a former Dragon Age writer. They're very determined suddenly to see your game fail. Again, taking anything and everything out of context to defend themselves, to defend their garbage product. We don't want to see games fail. We don't want to see studios fail. We want good games. And if you refuse to put out good games, well, we want you to fail. We want you to stop because we're not interested. But what happens if all these studios shut down and you don't have games to play? Well, first of all, that's not going to happen because there's one independent studio after another that actually care about the product that they are putting out, the game that they're making, the story they're trying to tell. So as far as the indie dev goes, we have hundreds, if not thousands. And that's not even including the backlog that every single gamer, I'm confident in saying, has. Hundreds, if not thousands of games that we can just go play and not have to worry about the AAA modern audience slop being pushed out. This one from PC Gamer, because of course it is. They're very determined suddenly to see your game fail. Former Dragon Age writer calls out anti-fans, oh dear, who bet on games failing before launch. If these games were good, do you have any idea the celebrations that people were making with the number of games, myself included, that have come out in the past few months? People being excited to play. Regardless of the mixed reception for Doom: The Dark Ages, I'm having a lot of fun playing it. I'm looking forward to playing The Precinct. What else do we have? My brain's just malfunctioning. Clear Obscura, Expedition 33, Schedule 1. There's one game after another, plus the numerous games that are scheduled to release for later this year. This is an interesting time for gamers because there's one success after another, but yet you want to sit here and blame the fans, the anti-fans, who want your games to fail, while at the same time we're sitting here celebrating, praising one game after another for how well it stuck the landing. Again, we have David Gator criticized the way gamers have come to celebrate certain games' failures. Now, what certain games is he talking about? We're not going to take bets on this because we know he's going to be referring to the games that just they're inclusive, they're diverse, one DEI slop after another DEI slop, or DIE, diversity, inclusion, and equity. These games are failing because they focus on the inclusion. They focus on the checkbox. They focus on the vitiligo, the pronouns, and so on and so forth, instead of focusing on, well, the game, the world, the story, the characters. Why on earth would anyone want those games to fail? Well, they end up being boring, nonsensical slop. Here's the quote, and we'll finish off with this one. The difficulty is suddenly you end up with anti-fans. Then they turn from what you want, fans who would go out and spread word of your game and get people interested. You know how many people are screaming from the rafters that you need to go play Clear Obscura, Expedition 33? You know how people have been screaming from the rafters to go play Baldur's Gate 3? What's the difference in those games? Here's a hint. One's fun, one is not. But if you get anti-fans, which is, again, a made-up word, a made-up concept, to pass the blame from your garbage product and your garbage work to something else, to deflect. They sort of do the opposite. They're very determined suddenly to see your game fail because it's a shit game as sort of a lesson to others who would make games of the same type, right? Yes, garbage. Stop making garbage games. Stop catering to an audience that does not show up. It seems like a very simple concept. Again, going back to the modern audience, this fictitious, this make-believe cloud of mist audience that you are trying to make games for, trying to pull them in, most of the time into games that they're not really interested in. Let them go play Doki Doki Literature Club. Let them go play the mobile games, or, leave them to their niche games. Cater to your core audience, and you might be surprised at what happens at the bottom line. You're making games for people that don't exist. You're making a game for a demographic that doesn't spend money because, well, for whatever reason. Anti-fans. They're very determined suddenly to see your game fail because it's shit. I already said that. And that, honestly, these days, there's some element of that present in almost all fandoms. Yes, that one good product. This is so mind-boggling to me. But it's always sort of been there for RPGs in particular. Well, when you create a game in a long, decades-old franchise that people know the lore, that know the characters, that know what's going on, the lore, I'm repeating myself. And then suddenly you throw a wrench into it and change it and turn it on its head, they're going to be a little miffed. Gator went on to explain how he sees fandom culture exacerbate this problem. Quote, more and more fandoms are making the things that they're fans of integral to their identity. Well, I mean, that's kind of what's being a fan, and you're going to insult that. Good job, the people, prospective customers. We're going to insult the potential customers. How wonderful. Let's see how that works out for you. And if it's integral to their identity, anything that affects it or insults it insults them. If you go that far, hey, maybe take a break. So they are so invested in making it what they imagine that, like I said, if they turn into the anti-fans, suddenly it's their personal investment in seeing that fail or seeing the developers who made that decision be punished. I will never understand this idea of insulting the fans. It is happening across pretty much all fandoms, whether it's Star Wars, Doctor Who, Marvel, DC, RPGs, it's across the entertainment industry. You're going to insult your critics when you have legitimate criticism. You're going after the trolls. I get it. The people that go, oh my God, it's a black woman. I'm not going to play this. Whoa. I get that. They're trolls. Don't talk to them. Don't acknowledge them. Don't feed them. However, you continuously ignore and lump the actual critics' legitimate criticism in with those trolls. And if you continue to do that over and over and over again, then you will continue to reap the fruits of your own words. Time and time again, you ignore the critics, you pay attention to the trolls, you lump everyone into this massive negativity. And, well, the fans who never said anything or have, well, maybe share the same opinions with the critics are suddenly seeing that you're insulting them, or they feel like you're insulting them. And no matter how many times you sit there and say, we're not talking about you, we're talking about them over there. Well, the you that you're talking about, or the others, the silent majority, the silent customers, feel the same way as the ones that you're going after. So they'll feel like you're attacking them, whether you like it or not, whether you agree with it or not. It is what it is. It happens. And they will close their wallets and go off somewhere, most likely to the channels that you're attacking, that you're criticizing, because you just can't understand how someone can't like your game. You're passing the blame, you're passing the buck instead of looking in the mirror and taking responsibility for the slop product that you make, and you reap what you sow. And I'm here with marshmallows and popcorn to enjoy it all the way. But hey, heaven forbid accountability would ever be a thing again. But let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Leave a like, leave a dislike, do all those nifty little things that YouTubers beg you to do, and I'll return you to your regularly scheduled programming.